Thank you for joining us. A recent column in Yahoo Finance points to something that you, reverse mortgage professionals, will certainly want to note, and it's this. We're seeing an increasing number of those that are seeking or investigating a reverse mortgage, looking to the loan not so much as part of a retirement cash flow strategy, but as a means of survival. Let's see what the column says. New analysis from GreenPath Financial Wellness shows a growing number of seniors that are seeking reverse mortgages are facing significant and even worsening financial strain. GreenPath, a HUD-certified HECM counselor and also an NFCC-approved national nonprofit that helps Americans live financial healthier lives over the last 65 years, is now reviewing data from reverse mortgage counseling sessions over the past 2 years. And what they found is that both the prevalence and the severity of budget deficits increased sharply from 2024 to 2025. In fact, from 2024 to 2025, the percentage of homeowners that were seeking reverse mortgage counseling who are already facing a budget deficit nearly doubled, increasing from 12.2% in 2024 to 21.1% in 2025. These are not small gaps, said Jennifer Frazier, Director of Stakeholder Engagement and Grants at GreenPath. These are not small gaps, said Jennifer Frazier, Director of Stakeholder Engagement and Grants at GreenPath. Budget shortfalls of this size often mean struggling to afford essential living costs, such as housing, healthcare, utilities, and food. Since funds from a reverse mortgage can be used for almost anything, it becomes a lifeline in times of financial hardship. And that's something that many of you are seeing on the front lines as a reverse mortgage professional today. An increasing percentage of those that are seeking or investigating a reverse mortgage are under financial strain right at this very moment. Half of GreenPath reverse mortgage clients live on less than 50% of their area median income, or AMI. Across 2024 and 2025 combined, approximately 23% of clients fell into the very low income bracket of household incomes that were below 30% of the area median income. They found that older age groups, with the 80-plus age group experiencing the largest increase in deficit rates, more than doubling from 12.6% in 2024 to 25.8% in 2025. Fortunately, HUD grants have lowered the barrier, at least the cost barrier, for older homeowners that are seeking to perhaps get a reverse mortgage and making those counseling sessions at no cost. Many seniors have spent their life working hard to own a home, so drawing on its equity seems like an obvious choice, but there are a lot of pros and cons to consider first, says GreenPath. This grant helps ensure that older adults living on strained incomes don't have to navigate complex financial decisions alone. Did you know that most home finance recommendations from both advisors and especially the financial media is not age appropriate? That's the case that Dan Hultquist, industry expert and author, makes in his recent column in Housing Wire. Let's take a look. Why the right home equity strategy changes in retirement and why reverse mortgages deserve a closer look. Hultquist notes that a borrower's age should shape every financing recommendation, yet it is often treated as a secondary detail when a senior wants or needs to access a portion of their equity. Noting that most mortgage advice is built on the assumption that the borrower will continue to work and also has time and resources to recover from a financial setback. Those assumptions, says Hultquist, break the moment that someone retires. And if the assumptions change, then the strategy should change as well. And Dan points to something very important. Much of the advice is directed at those in their 30s, 40s, or 50s when they're still working, they have a stable income, and they can manage their debt or even leverage it. However, when a homeowner is in their 70s and living on the fixed income, their financial picture changes dramatically. At 70, the equation shifts. Income is often fixed, expenses become less predictable, most likely due to healthcare expenses, and time is limited. And also financial setbacks carry more weight because there's less time to recover. Most of the advice when it comes to home equity is centered on getting the best interest rate and also how to leverage your debt effectively, but that is not the case or the need for an older homeowner in most circumstances. That shift should change the goal of home equity lending. At older ages, it's no longer about maximizing leverage or optimizing interest rates. Instead, it's about protecting cash flow, preserving flexibility, and reducing financial pressure. When financial recommendations fail to recognize that reality, loan products can do more harm than good. And those of you watching or listening right now would certainly agree. So against this backdrop of traditional media advice and also from financial advisors, most homeowners are going to gravitate to what they've known, to what is familiar. And what are those products or loans? The first is a HELOC, or a home equity line of credit, but it comes with some unique risk of its own. First, for a retiree on a fixed income, it requires monthly payments. And even during the interest-only draw period, those payments could increase if interest rates rise. Eventually, that loan will recast into a fully amortized repayment, which can create a payment shock. Hultquist also points out something that we've mentioned repeatedly on this show, and it's this. A HELOC is not a sure deal. In fact, a home equity line of credit can be reduced or even completely frozen for a homeowner who has done nothing to warrant that, not because of missing payments or bad credit, merely because the housing market has changed. So if home values do begin to drop significantly, then that HELOC can be frozen or reduced, unlike the HECM line of credit. And when it comes to refinancing, it can often increase pressure financially with a fixed obligation at the wrong point of life. It also forces the borrower to take a lump sum, which means interest begins accruing on day one on the full amount, whether those funds are utilized or not, or even needed. And what about those HEIs, or home equity investments? I'm seeing ads for those constantly, perhaps because most of my research is based on real estate and housing finance, but home equity investments are being marketed as debt-free, no payments, yet the amount of future home equity that is forfeited is substantial, and oftentimes it is a complete shock to the homeowner. That has resulted in an increasing number of lawsuits against HEI, or home equity investment companies. Hultquist notes that these arrangements tell a different story. They require the homeowner to give up a significant portion of the home's future value in exchange for cash today. Of course, the shared frustration in our industry is that much of the advice given to older homeowners is in fact age inappropriate. And now we have the reverse mortgage, right? Which was designed specifically, as Dan Hultquist notes, for older homeowners. The reverse mortgage stands apart because it was built specifically for this stage of life. At its core, it removes the requirement for monthly principal and interest payments. The borrower must simply just occupy and maintain the home and pay all property charges. And that addresses one of the biggest challenges in retirement, managing cash flow with limited income. Dan brings a lot of insight to our industry consistently. For those of you that have been doing this business for a while, you know that well. But there is also a hidden nugget of wisdom in this particular column in Housing Wire, and it's this. Dan's approach to home financing, I think, is something that you can bring up in a conversation with a potential reverse mortgage borrower. In other words, look at the other options. What do they entail, and are they in fact appropriate for their particular stage of life, especially if they're retired and on a fixed income, all which leads to the age-appropriate loan, the reverse mortgage. If there's one thing that I find myself enjoying each week as your host here at HECMWorld, it is the show prep and research. And why is that? Well, because it often leads me to stories that I was completely unaware of that do in fact tie into senior finance and reverse mortgages, and such is the case with a recent column from the Daily Mail. And it's talking about Florida condo owners who now find themselves unable to sell their condos, or they have to slash the price to, yes, 4-digit levels. Yep, sub $100,000 sale prices on condos. And we're going to dive into this column to see exactly why that's happening. The Daily Mail reports that condo owners are stuck with homes that no one will buy as they wake up to a grim repercussion of new laws. Florida condo owners are waking up to a new brutal reality. Their homes are becoming virtually worthless. Desperate sellers all over the Sunshine State are slashing prices to as little as $10,000 and still failing to find buyers. The property problem across the state has been triggered by a new safety law that was brought about after the 2021 deadly Surfside condominium collapse, which killed 98 people. It's now forcing aging buildings to undergo inspections and for those condo associations to fund massive repairs. Florida-based real estate expert Catherine Fitzenitzer told the Daily Mail that for many owners, this has meant repair bills in excess of $100,000, soaring HOA fees, which have averaged $135 per month in 2025, and also a market that is now flooded with condo listings that no one wants. Worse still, hundreds of buildings have effectively been blacklisted by mortgage giants, meaning that buyers can't even secure loans to purchase the condo. More than half of Florida's condo stock is now over 30 years old, and that places millions of units under stricter post-Surfside regulations. And in some cases, prices appear to have collapsed. On Zillow, the Daily Mail found dozens of condominium properties listed in Florida at around the four-figure price mark, ranging from standalone plots to high-rises and multi-unit structures. Other units have been listed on the market for almost a year, with prices repeatedly slashed and even furnishings thrown in, yet still attracting no buyers. In the case of Boynton Beach, around 57 miles north of Miami, several properties are within a golf course complex, but are still listed at strikingly low prices. And the price collapse is so extreme that even one condo unit, which was built in the early 80s and has about 1,700 square feet, was recently listed for just $6,000. Can you imagine that? Yet on the flip side, the Daily Mail found that properties in the districts of Brickell and downtown in Miami, which are newer condos with half the square footage, can cost up to $400,000. At the root of the problem is that the older condos that meet the Surfside regulation threshold must undergo mandatory structural milestone inspections and maintain fully funded reserves for future repairs, which can bring an end to years of underfunded maintenance. And even more sadly, retirees who purchased a condo for cash and thought that they were set financially in their retirement now find themselves devastated. They've learned they're only being handed a 5 or 6 figure bill they have no way to plan or to pay for. Then you add the surging cost of insurance premiums, HOA fees, and many condo owners are finding themselves stuck financially and actually unable to sell an asset they can no longer afford. At the heart of the crisis, says the Daily Mail, is a problem that has been building quietly for decades: deferred maintenance. What's even more concerning is that this issue is likely to spread far beyond the borders of Florida as America's housing stock and condos are aging.